What's going on, guys? How are you doing? I hope that this podcast finds you well. I want to say hello to everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to listen. And I also did notice that we had a few views on YouTube, and I wanted to say hello to the YouTube family. Thank you so much for listening. But I wanted to give a real quick update. This is another rant in reference to the Cora Jakes, TD Jakes, Michelle Loud situation. As I stated before, this thing just has me so, y'all, this story just has me so frustrated on just to the highest degree, okay? And I'm sure many people that have been following this story share the same sentiments because this is crazy. This is crazy. I'm coming back right now because Tasha K, which my YouTube family knows who Tasha K is. However, regular podcast family, Tasha K is a YouTube content creator. She has 1 million subscribers, so she does have a very large reach in the Black YouTube sector. She did a interview with Michelle Loud, who is the baby Jason, Cora Jakes, the child that Cora Jakes now is raising. And she released this interview on Tasha K Live, which is an app that she has. Now, if she does release this story on YouTube, I will cover it because I think it's important, like I said, to get as much factual information about it. I can break it down in my own way, make it make sense, and bring it back to Bible if necessary. And I can also just break it down just in my normal way so you can understand my perspective on the issue and what we're hearing together in certain, it's like certain clips. We can do that. Now, do I think that Tasha K is going to release this interview on YouTube? The answer to that would be no. I don't think she's going to release it for other reasons, but that's not what this is about. And I think that her releasing it on her app, as long as Michelle Loud is getting as much eyes, attention, as many people can listen to it in whichever way possible, it's positive for Michelle Loud. Forget about Tasha K and how I feel personally about her and some of the things that she's done. If this can help the case, the child needs her baby back. So if it can help, I'm all for it. So we will cover it. I mean, fair is fair. The child has an app. It costs to do that. She did the interview on there. So, of course, we should wait until she brings it to YouTube to break that information down. It's only fair. But there were some key points that I wanted to bring up because I just thought it was crazy. And I wanted to talk about it real quick. And then like I said before, I'm going to get out your way. So I thought it was crazy. Michelle spoke, and this is not just on the Tasha K interview. If you were to listen to Michelle Loud's interview on her videos on YouTube in reference to the situation, she did also mention it there. But basically, Cora Jakes had used therapy recordings in court. And what am I talking about? Now, when apparently Michelle and Cora Jakes were friends from young. Okay, this is not a relationship that happened for like a year or two or something like that. They were friends from young. And Cora came back into her life. She was going through some things. She had come back into her life just before she had baby Jason. And Cora ended up in the hospital while she was giving birth. And I guess at some point, Michelle went to live with Cora Jakes at her home. And Cora was painting this picture like she was her counselor. And I believe this because if you go to Cora Jakes' website, you will see that she has sessions on there right now. Cora Jakes has personal counseling sessions. You can get, something like 6 of them for $950. She's offering counseling. Even still right now, in the midst of all of this, she's offering counseling for $950. Ma'am, your credentials, please. What school did you go to for medicine? Where did you do your externship? Counselor? And because of the fact that she's not a real counselor, she was able to take those recordings that were supposed to be confidential between Michelle and Cora and use them in court. Make it make sense, okay? Because even in the court of law, even when you were in court, if someone heard that you were using recordings of this nature and heard what was being said on those recordings and realized the context in which those recordings were being utilized, a normal courtroom would think that that was weird. That maybe we shouldn't be listening to this and probably would be thrown out for some reason. I'm sure there's some type of lawyer statute rule, something or the other. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. But I'm sure there's some way that they could have had that thrown out so that couldn't even be listened to in court. But you mean to tell me a whole judge and 2 whole attorneys and whoever else was in there found this okay to be used as evidence as to why Cora Jakes should be the new mother of baby Jason? Make it make sense. Doing things in the name of God, saying that you're her spiritual counselor, and then now manipulating the word of God, and then flipping it on the person who you're supposed to be helping. And this is not blasphemy. And we're going to say, oh, don't talk about the situation. Just pray for the man of God. Pray for the woman of God. Woman of God, man of God, where? This is devil behavior. And it needs to stop. So yes, calling it out. What happened in that courtroom in reference to those therapy counseling sessions and those recordings, they should have never even made it in the courtroom. Horrible. And the other thing that I thought was really crazy, just switching gears really quick. Apparently on the T.D. Jakes estate, on the property, I'm sure it's a very large property. I don't know, haven't seen it, have no desire to look at any pictures. But what I found interesting was when Sarah Jakes and Cora Jakes were brought up, they did not stay in the same home as their parents. This story just gets worse and worse. They did not stay in the house of their parents. So on this estate, on this property, I'm sure, like I said, it's very large. There's the main house, the big house. I've heard this talked about in other circles when they talk about the main house, big house, or mama house, or whatever, especially when you have multiple houses on a property. The big house was, of course, T.D. Jakes' home. And there was, of course, like another house behind that house or further back in that house. It was a smaller house that Cora and Sarah lived in. Okay? And this is the reason why Sarah was able to get pregnant at, I think it was 13 years old, I believe. I mean, even in a secular world, 13 is very extreme. Okay? Very extreme. And apparently, allegedly, this is all alleged, now that I got a couple of YouTube people listening, allegedly, when Sarah found out that she was pregnant, she waited until she was within that abortion safe zone where you can't get an abortion anymore, and she sent a message over to the big house, T.D. Jakes' house, to let him know that she was pregnant. But she didn't say anything until basically she couldn't get rid of the baby. Now that right there, I'm going to leave that there. As to why she did it that way, I'm going to leave that for those who are deep analytical thinkers. Think as you will on that part, okay? But this is how crazy this is, okay? So these children are, in essence, raising themselves. And this points back to something that I was saying before about you've got to be careful about your pastor and about the fruits that they possess. If you want to know about your pastor and how he really runs the inner circle of his church, look at how he runs his family. If you really want to know about how a pastor is treating his congregation, his inner circle, all those people in his church staff, if you really want to know, look at how the pastor treats his family. Look at how he handles conflict. Look at the attention he puts on his children. Look at how he deals with them. Now, if your family is in chaos, your personal family is in chaos, and things are not in order, and things keep on happening with your children that are clearly wrong. Something's clearly going on. Seriously wrong. Some serious spirits need to be dealt with in your home, but instead of focusing on that, you decide to focus on the church, on the money, on the power, on the leadership, leaving your children to their own devices. So if they were struggling with some things that could have been cleaned up, that could have been prayed for, that could have been helped by easier means than what we're dealing with right now, okay? If something could have been done, we would have known because you weren't raising those children. Those children were raising themselves. And you wonder why a Cora Jakes right now can have a whole Instagram and she's just acting like nothing is wrong. Comments aren't limited anymore. Okay? Acting like it's all good because she feels as though her money and her power and influence is more than the Spirit of God and what's right and what is written. That's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with black and white. This is not up to interpretation. When you are operating under the house of God, under the name of God, under the name of Jesus Christ, now you are up to us breaking apart and dissecting what is going on because you're trying to be a spiritual representation. How can you be a spiritual representation like this? It's not right. It's not right. So for any church you go to, and I've learned this over the years, over many, many years, and when I look back at it, it was right there in front of my face. If you want to know how your church is going to be, pay special attention. If those kids are up in that church, or if you hear stories, or if someone is able to tell you about how the pastor deals with their family, if the family's not on display, but if people talk about that have had communication and interaction with that family, if they're able to talk about accounts of that family, most of the time it lines up exactly with what is going on in the church body. And there's always a level of selfishness because make it make sense on how, and this is just a real quick thing, but how it is that when it comes to pastors, the pastors have the big house, the pastors are driving the nice cars, the pastor and that sometimes even their, the first family are living a certain kind of way, but you struggling as a congregant member, okay, you're struggling to pay tithes. You're struggling to donate to the anniversary fund and the kids fund and this fund and that fund and this one. And then this person died, so give to this funeral fund and this one. You're struggling because the church's hand is always out to get your money. And then like I said before, they back it up with biblical references and then they beat you over the head with it, make you feel guilty. And now you're giving them your guilt money. Okay. And this cycle continues for year after year after year, and you are always struggling. But yet the word says one thing about how you're going to overcome and you're going to get through this, but you never really get through it. But your pastor is still living really great. Make it make sense. Where's that energy? It's a level and a spirit of selfishness. If you love like the Bible tells you to love, you're going to want your congregation to have exactly what you have. And if nobody's growing, and if nobody has what you have, except for the people that came in the door with it already, then we talking about there's a problem. Now, when we look at Cora Jakes, okay, and her in this whole situation, she had a friend. Her friend was Michelle. Let's suppose everything was perfect and the adoption was done in the most ethical way possible, which it was not. But let's just say hypothetically it was. That is your friend, allegedly. That's your friend. She wants her baby back. Give the child her baby back. You mean to tell me with all that power and influence and money, you could not afford to get a surrogate to have a child for you? With all that influence, power, and money, you guys couldn't find someone who was willing to give up their child and just pay them off? All these children out here, all these mothers who are lost, that are not in the church, who are dropping off children here, there, and everywhere, that you couldn't find something, even if you could not go through the legal adoption process because of your background. You couldn't find some other way to get a child other than manipulating someone who was in a rough patch at the time, who was suffering from postpartum depression. You couldn't find any other way with all that money, power, and influence. So you guys would rather spend that money in court and pushing through illegal paperwork, manipulating judges and having judges and attorneys that go to your church and sit on your board manipulate the court system to get one child from a young lady who has 4 other ones. You'd rather go through all of that instead of just paying for a surrogate. And I see what you did, Cora, because clearly baby Jason looks like her ex-husband, Brandon Coleman. So when she saw the light-skinned baby, she was thinking this baby could look like it belonged to us. And this is how she probably tried to spin in her mind, her twisted mind, that baby was for that family because he looked like he could come from her ex-husband. That's what I believe, allegedly, in my opinion. Okay, because you got to say that. This is just opinion and speculation. But that's what I feel. I feel as though because that baby looked like it could be a part of her family, she decided to go ahead and move forward with that. Let's not even get into 13-year-old Amari, actually, AKA Bianca, and what's going on with that situation, because there's a lot of red flags going on there. And my thing is, wow, TD Jakes, are you really not going to come out and say something and make this situation right? What in the world does your daughter have on you to make you not say anything and make this situation right behind the scenes before it even hit the media? What would make you not make this situation right before it even got to this point? What does Cora Jakes have on you, TD, that would make you not want to make this right? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, family. And it's not right. Blasphemy. Straight up blasphemy. I am so glad that some years back, I saw that clip of Tyler Perry laying hands on TD Jakes. I'm so happy I had a chance to see them devils running around on that stage them years ago, because that's what set me free from this whole little motivational, me listening to TD Jakes thing I was doing, because he was not spitting Bible to me. Because when I look back at it, it's just wrong. The stuff he starts to say and he starts to change and turn over the years, it's just wrong. I don't know where. I almost got caught up with that. But it's okay. There was a ram in the bush. Oh, yes, there was a ram in the bush. There was a Tyler Perry that decided to come on stage just because he wanted to give you $1 million, lay hands on you, and then speak in a tongue, not speaking in tongues, a tongue, because that's not a tongue of God. Literally, when you hear him speaking that tongue, the Medea voice comes out. If you want to go back to the clip, go listen. His Medea voice literally comes out as he's speaking in the fake tongue. Blasphemy. When I saw that, when I started breaking down everything and seeing what's really going on in the Potter's house and with TD Jakes and so forth, and his associations with Oprah and all these people, oh no. This is not under God. This is not under God. So my question to TD Jakes right now, as I conclude, my question would be, TD Jakes, what side of history do you want to be on? I mean, or do you even care right now? Honestly. We got the Daryl Patrick situation. I'm not going there in this particular podcast. Situations with that, okay? We've got other people who have come out in situations that have been fighting the Potter's house in court for things that have literally actually happened. There's actual documentation proof, okay? People just coming out, which means that there are a whole slew of other people who are not coming out, and things are happening too. This has got to stop. TD, what side of history do you want to be on? Because I know someone who was called Pastor Jim Jones. Pastor Jim Jones. In this day and age, if he was still alive, he would probably be called Bishop Jim Jones. Yeah, he was radical. People really liked him. He also came from a Pentecostal background. He realized how to manipulate the people at the time. He realized to go to California because of what was happening at that time in transition with church and people wanting to find themselves and be free, and they wanted spiritual help, and they wanted to look to someone that was going to help them through the time in that era. And some of them found Pastor Jim Jones. Oh yeah, Jim Jones, he made history, all right. He made history. Is that the kind of history that you want to have in your name, TD Jakes? And no, I'm not saying that. Oh, I am saying that he's a cult leader. Yes. I am saying that the Potter's House, that is a cult. Now that I'm seeing what's going on, that is a cult. Okay? Because, and I think people are in a cult and they don't even know it. And I think that back in Jonestown days, that, well, by the time they got to the last part, I believe that most knew, but there were still some that were so brainwashed. And you also have to understand that you've got people who are psychopaths who are manipulating people who have mental health issues. And that's what happens in the church today as well. That's how they're able to get so much money from someone who can't pay their rent, yet you paying the pastor. Okay? There's some serious mental health issues, and people prey on those things. Now, Jim Jones is a specific issue because he had certain mental health issues that led him down a certain path. But he did make history, all right. And while the path for TD Jakes may not be Jim Jones, because, of course, TD Jakes is not Jim Jones, you don't want to be the one who's known for a scandal. Multiple scandals. Because by the time we got down to, like I've told my podcast people before, I study cults. I could talk about cults all day long. I understand it. It's something that's interesting to me on the mindset, the things that they were able to get away with, how they were able to get away with it, how they did it. I've studied most of the major cults. And this situation that we got before us, I'm telling you, there are a lot of red flags, red markers of a cult. If you've studied any, you would know what I'm talking about. This is not right. And if God has not hardened your heart, TD, it's time to repent, make things right. Give the girl her baby back. Start doing some things a little bit different. Stop trying to sign new NDAs in your church around your staff, because that's not going to work. The wrath of God is more than an NDA. The wrath of God is more than the power of your friends. It's more than the government. So be very, very careful. If God has not hardened your heart completely, because like I said before, if God hardened his heart, then we will watch the fall. But let this be a cautionary tale to my Christians, for those who are the lover of the true living God. Don't follow no man. He is not your God. And it's being exposed. And it's going to continue to get worse. If you don't make things right, it's going to continue to keep going. And as you can see, this story now has branches. It's stemming out into other things. Brandon Coleman, that situation. Other church members and certain things that have happened. Other people in Potter's House that have been actually convicted that were in his inner circle. So many things are coming out. You can't keep a lid on it. There's not enough power. You don't have enough for that. So that's all from this, you guys. I don't want to make it too long. We get into that little bit longer period. I don't want it to be broken all up into a million parts and stuff. So I hope that you've learned something from this. I hope that you continue to follow, pray for her. Donate to Michelle Loud if you're able to help her get her son back, because that's a fact. A fact of the matter is she does not have her son and she needs her son back. You can speculate, talk about everything else, but that's a fact. There's enough evidence to support that she needs to have her son back. Make things right. Do the right thing. Now, the only time I'm going to come back with anything else in regards to this story is if I hear anything new that is big. And I will do that. And like I said, if Tasha K drops on YouTube that interview with Michelle Loud. I will speak on that as well. Other than that, be well. I got other stuff to talk about. We got to talk about sociopath, psychopath relationships. I was talking about soul ties before. Got to talk about some other things. We got to get into some other things. But I definitely needed to make sure I talked about this because, like I said, as a Christian, as someone who is 150% spiritual, lover of God, talk to him every day, multiple times a day. I had to speak out on this because, like I said, this is just not right. All right, guys, until next time, as always, I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.